Minister Baptiste.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I want to start again too by congratulating you, Madam Vice President, on your ascendancy to the position of acting Vice Chair President. I'm honored to rise in support of this appropriation bill, which reflects the government's commitment to the well-being of citizens and the development of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Vice President, allow me first to commend my esteemed colleague, the Minister of Finance, and his team on this budget, which reflects the clear vision set out by this government in our official policy framework and focuses on putting Trinidad and Tobago first, building economic fairness through accountable fiscal policies. I also laud my fellow ministers and members of parliament who were instrumental in reflecting the will and desires of the people in the first budget in a long time, which can truly be considered a people's budget. I would like to commend our caring Prime Minister, the Honorable Kamala Persad-Sessi, for her profound leadership and vision that has been realized through this budget. I take this moment to congratulate her on her recent People's Choice Leader Award at the Caribbean Global Awards held in London. This award, I know, is made even more meaningful as it was the result of a vote and therefore a true reflection of the voice of the people. Madam Vice President, I must also thank my fellow senators for their insights into the budget through their respective contribution. I do value the opinion of my colleagues in this august chamber. And last but definitely not least, on my list of acknowledgements are all those persons who contributed in one way or the other by way of their expert opinions, verbal feedback, written comments, etc., to shaping the historic fiscal package meant to bring real change to real people. Madam Vice President, you have a very limited time to contribute. But I can't just move on without, and leave everything said, without some kind of concerns of my own, based on what was said here this morning so far. My colleague, Senator Vishnu Dan Paul, he spoke about a collapsed budget. And then somehow he said, well, that has always happened. I find I wasn't sure whether it was a bad thing or a good thing he was saying, because he kind of acknowledged it happened before, this concept of a collapsed budget. And then I heard, and I really understood and respected the contribution of Senator Dr. Malinats, and I heard a lament asking the questions. And Senator Dan Paul, it's not a collapsed budget you ought to be concerned about. is a collapsed PNM. Because the questions being asked would have been answered if the other place, the PNM, had not collapsed. You spoke about a budget and the figures. I just want to be clear that a lot of that budget is to provide for outstanding arrears left by the PNM that we still have to. You spoke about a failed education system and the budget allocated for that. Let me remind the PNM, my God, this Pontius Pilate thing can't work. Colleagues, of the 69 years of self-governance in this country, you have been at the helm for 53 of those years. Colleagues, the UNC, this big bad UNC is only 10 years. That plus a couple months that we have been in office. Whatever problem you have in the education system, is we fixing it now. And then you point to the next big issue in the budget about crime and the amount of money we're spending on national security issues. That you feel is not the point, but that's the point. There's a big budget to deal with crime because we met and inherit uncontrolled crime and criminality left after 10 years by the PNM.
You know, reach. Yeah, just reach.
You spoke about one of the things you hope for, and I appreciate that. You want to have implementation units in all ministries so that they could effectively execute. You're right. That ought to be there. What you have been doing for the last 10 years, why is it not there? It is not there because the PNM, not only for the last 10 years, and I want people to always remember that they have been there for 53 years at the helm of this country. And guess what you have? The public service plagued with what? 50% of its positions are vacant. Vacancies rendering it ineffective. And then there's come and lament about the ineffectiveness of the public service. Because why? They failed to fill the vacancies, and moreover, they failed to restructure the public service, to modernize the public service, to ensure that it could meet the demands of the current society that we live in. The PNM's failure is why we're in a situation where you're now talking about implementation unit. Yes, it will happen. And guess what? We will fix it. And I like how you mentioned the fiscal deficit. And you give us a figure to 50 billion. Since 2009, you talk about we having that deficit. I know, the overdraft. But you say this since 2009. Again, colleague, who in charge of this place of all these years, for you to mention these things like if it came from nowhere. That situation is largely caused because of the ineffectiveness and incompetence of the People National Movement. And yes, we will deal with it. I like how you made a plug for your tax-free pension for yourself. I think that was, at least that's a good contribution. Give him a thump, he wanted the pension. We will deal with that at some other time. But something you also mentioned, and I want to draw it to the attention of the national community, because it concerns me. This bothers me. When you point out NIS, and you try to purport that somehow the government is going back on its word in how we treat with the NIS situation. Colleagues, and I like how Dr. Marlene Senator Dr. Marlene would have pointed out to the importance of the CSO as our vanguards for data-driven decision-making. It is that. And one of the major problems that the NIS faced, and we all had to come to understand that, the biggest problem faced by the NIS has been the existence of the People National Movement. And why did I say that? Because in the last 10 years, CSO statistics, over 64,900 jobs lost, and therefore the corresponding drop in contribution to the NIS based on the last 10 years of the PNM existence. So you have a major deficit of contribution to the NIS fund. And we have found ourselves here having to treat with that with a level of urgency, lest we face the collapse of NIS and the NIB. When they take and destroy jobs, not understanding the multiplying effect of that, it also impacts the contribution to the NIS scheme. That they, in 10 years, 64,900 jobs were lost.
And then they sucked on the actual report.
So, I just want to put that on record. But I'm the Minister of Labor, Small and Micro Enterprise Development. My focus here in this debate, again, is to treat two simple issues. One, as the Minister of Labor, I'm elated when the Minister of Finance placed on the budget $475 million as an employment fund to treat with the employment of persons in this country. I thought it was something that I needed to comment on, which I will comment on. And moreover, to indicate how this ministry, under my charge, is going to assist in sustainable development and growth of our economy. Madam Vice President, before we can speak of solutions, we must confront failures. The previous PNM administration left behind a legacy of neglect, inertia, and institutional decay. The PNM overall impact on the society over the last 53 years, whilst it was at the helm, as we all know, and you speak about it glowingly, Senator Dan Paul, the mere fact that this economy, we failed to diversify the economy, notwithstanding for decades being in charge. We have the widening of the income inequality gap between the haves and the have-nots, courtesy the PNM. We have the out-of-control crime and criminality, the courtesy the PNM. And of course, we have had, over the years, massive job losses I wouldn't go into those figures, but massive job losses, whether it's Caroni, BV, TSC, Petrotrin, and the list will go on. It is not surprising, therefore, that in the last 10 years, we met an industrial relations climate in Trinidad and Tobago that was in disarray, characterized by industrial action, failed wage negotiations, the collapse of the National Tripartite Council. Madam President, prior to my installation as the Minister of Labour, Small and Micro Enterprise Development, the industrial relations climate in Trinidad and Tobago could be described in only one word. That word is unhealthy. In my former iteration as the president of the PSA, I would have had cause to lead the charge against a politicized special tribunal where the chairman would have sought to extend powers that he did not possess in a bid to foist a 10-year collective bargaining agreement upon civil servants, when the period which was being negotiated was for 6 years. In the interest of time, I need not regurgitate the decision of the Court of Appeal that the special tribunal could not so exercise those powers that it did not have. But my greater point here is that the unjust treatment and oppression of workers by the former regime was boldly orchestrated from the highest echelons of our public institutions. You see, Madam Vice President, for the past 9 years, the former PNM government appeared to be shamelessly and appallingly unaware of the need to establish and maintain the tripartite structures that were necessary to steer this country in the direction of industrial peace and harmony. It is trite industrial relations, Madam Vice President, that in the absence of genuine tripartite processes, productivity and growth will suffer. The former government did nothing to repair the fractures that were formed at the very highest level of NTAC, and so the inextricable link of failure to consult and negotiate and industrial instability was made manifest. We had all witnessed the worrying indicators of a deteriorating industrial relations climate. Threats of industrial action loom large across several sectors, forestalled salary negotiation and poor health and safety practices. Among them, Madam Vice President, were within critical sectors such as tea and tech, Cal, the Port of Spain. Industrial action and staging of protests were the order of the day, and the inadequate response of the then government was seeming to suggest that the disruptions, work stoppages, losses in production, and adverse economic consequences were to be easily ignored. The then government abused the remedy of injunctive relief and exchanged consultation for legalism. Workers were seen as nothing more than pawns in the PNM playbook. This, Madam Vice President, even while our economy was reeling and still struggling to recover from an economic downturn occasioned by COVID-19. Madam Vice President, we are fixing this. As I would have alluded to, one of the things I want to stand here in solidarity with is this job creation, national recruitment drive. Because I want the national community to trust the process. Trust the process. I heard Senator Dr. Marley Nats. I heard her. I said, trust the process. Madam Vice President, the best estimate of our future performance where that is concerned could be gauged by our track record. Let's look at some of the facts. And not the facts from Senator Baptiste or UNC facts. No, the facts not yellow. It's not red. The facts are the Central Statistical Office, the CSO facts on unemployment trends. In the period 2010 to 2015, under the UNC government, employment increased from 582,100 to 623,300, according to CSO, a net increase of 41,200 jobs. According to CSO, from 2015 to the first quarter of 2025, under the P&M, according to CSO, there was a decline from the 623,300 jobs to 558,900 jobs, a decline of 64,400 jobs. Now, this is CSO. It didn't stop there. Public sector employment, which include public service statutory boards of state enterprise. Under the UNC, public sector employment was 166,700 jobs. Under the PNM, as of the first quarter in 2025, public sector employment dropped to 129,900 jobs, a decline of 36,800 jobs. This is not made up. Well, we know looking at the economists, this thing is now a very popular indicator that is used, labor force participation rate. Those who are working and those who could looking for work. Under the UNC, the labor force participation rate between 2010 and 2015 on average was 61.5%. This is CSO. I want to stress, this is not mine. This is what you could use for decision making when people want to know who to trust. Where jobs are concerned, look to this. Under the P&M, the labor force participation rate dropped by over 6.3% to 54.3% under the P&M. So you had a fall in the labor force participation rate. Youth employment. Youth employment under the UNC, when left office in 2015, was 79,600. Under the PNM, the first quarter of 2025, that dropped to 51,700, a decline of 27,900.
And they talking.
Jobs lost. I want the national community to know we're talking about who could now, which is important. Create jobs. Create jobs. I've just shared with you what the track record shows. Under the UNC, there was a growth in jobs. Under the PNF, jobs. Under the UNC, jobs will increase, and under the PNM, jobs were lost by the thousands.
And that jobs
Colleagues, but guess what?
And that jobs narrative.
The UNC can fix it. Madam Vice President, as Minister of Labour, Small and Micro Enterprise Development, work is a core responsibility. Decent work is a core responsibility under the Ministry of Labour. Then we come to the perennial issue of make work programs, and we know this is of great concern. I want to acknowledge Dr. Marlene Arts and Senator Dr. Marlene Arts and how she would have spoke about him, and I really appreciate the concern. Madam Vice President, this country is a member of the International Labour Organization. Therefore, we are obligated, I want to stress, we are obligated, if not compelled, to promote decent work. You know, we talk about contractors, and this is not a matter I could discuss here, it's sub judice, yes? But I'm not studying that aspect of the contractors and CPEP and what have you. But what took place in that environment, what we call work. Don't make no mistake in believing when you hear somebody have a contract for 3 years that you feel for a moment that person's got 3 years of employment. That's not the case. When I speak to the persons impacted, they will be given that fortnight. They have to come again and hopefully be called again. If you get 2 fortnights, you go home and you may be called again. That is inconsistent with the concept of decent work that we have applied. Decent work, by definition, is productive employment that offers a fair income, workplace security, and social protection for families. We all know the problem is make work programs, and we have to deal with it. And we know the solution is decent work or well-defined, sustainable jobs. Real jobs for real people. But Madam Vice President, you know, we all understand what the problem, we understand what the solution is, but it's always who will bell the cat? Well, you know, the story about who will bell the cat. We all know, hopefully, the story of the mice. That the mice were being terrorized and hunted by a cat. The mice eventually called a council of the mice to determine how to treat with this threat to all of them. They brainstormed, and a young bright mouse came up with an idea that they should tie a bell around the neck of the cat so that when it approached, they will hear the bell and will make good their escape. The mice instantly rejoiced at the brilliance of the idea. That's a great solution, they shouted. However, as they rejoiced at the solution, an old and wise mouse asked in a subdued tone, I hear all it, but just who will bell the cat? With that, the council became quiet as there was no volunteer. Madam Vice President, the moral of the story is simple. As noble and as necessary as the goal may be, it remains merely an idea, unrealized and untouched, unless someone steps forward with the courage, conviction, and fortitude to carry it out.
Fix it.
Alas, came April 28, 2025. And with it came the election of the United National Congress and its leader, our Prime Minister, the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa. The Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa SC by actions, declared unequivocally and emphatically that she will build the She has launched an unprecedented initiative to replace indecent work, make work jobs with decent work. She has launched the national recruitment drive to fill over 20,000 public service jobs and state enterprises, including vacancies in TSTT, TNTech, WASEC, etc. Colleagues, we are on our way to decent jobs for all. Once and for all, the government has taken lead in promoting decent work in our beloved nation. We are honoring our ILO obligation to decent work. Real jobs, real people, real change.
No ghost need apply. No ghost.
Colleagues, I want to quickly just be clear that this is just not only just positive news, you know. This is something I want us to quickly recognize what the benefits. Because UNC plan to create the 20,000 public service jobs will reverse the negative trends created by under the PNM. It will promote economic stability. It will restore lost employment. It will stimulate consumption and it will boost the GDP. It will reduce poverty, crime, and youth disengagement. It provides sustainable, safe jobs with clearly defined terms and conditions. Colleagues, again, real jobs, real people, real change. In that environment, assuming there be, because as by now if anyone had gone on the site, you know it's all jobs. This is seeking to fill vacancies, and there are several tiers to it. There's a phase 1, there's a phase 2, and I'll get into the other aspect of it. But all jobs to fill. From basic skills, trades. If one was to assume, on average, at the filling of those vacancies, that you have net increase in salary of about $6,500 a month per person. Looking at high salaries, low salaries, in between salaries, that translates to a TT $78,000 a year someone could own. And if you have that now being the mean or median salary, you have total direct household income based on 20,000 being 20,000 by 78,000. Annually, we're talking about an injection of $1.56 billion into the economy. For the NIS, it could mean contribution to the extent of over $253 million annually. It also could mean increase, of course, the obvious increase in the labor participation rate, reduction in unemployment, increase in youth employment. But moreover, you have the impact of that where indirect job creation is concerned. To use the economics term, the multiplying effect. That what you could deal with When you have jobs, jobs create more jobs. That's just what happens. Demand-driven growth, that is just what happens. Yes, demand for more goods and services, that is what just happens.
Extrapolation.
And there are all type of multiplier rates that are used. If it's tradable, if it's non-tradable, job growth. But even the most conservative multiplier effect, if we were to use one at 1.5, because in some studies will let you know if it's a tradable job where it's export, it could as much as 2.5 indirect jobs could be created from the one new job and greater. But if you use a modest 1.5, you talk about the possibility of what? 20,000 jobs, indirectly creating 30,000 jobs. And then you have a total of 50,000 jobs.
Amen.
Even if you have a lower salary, mean salary, for the 30,000 job, maybe $5,000 or $4,500 for the salary, you're talking about the possibility of adding the next $1.8 billion again in circulation in this economy. And I say this because I want the business community know they have to support this budget.
Business budget.
And this initiative, because it seeks to inject into this economy as much as over $3 billion by the National Recruitment Drive initiative of the Honorable Prime Minister Kamala Prasad Bisesa, SC. Needless to mention, it also means a serious injection in funds for the NIS. Real jobs, real people, real change cameras. I spent some time. I want to spend my last few minutes. I tell you, don't have much time for this thing, some more time. To just simply see some of what, as the Minister of Labor, that we have been engaged in. Madam Vice President, on April 28, the people of Trinidad and Tobago chose competence over chaos. Under the leadership of the Honorable Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa SC, the United National Congress Administration has launched its Workers' Agenda, 20 action items, all activated, not one shelved, not one ignored. We rejected the 4%, the 4%, and the 5% offers imposed on public officers, and the Prime Minister, the Honorable Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, directed the Minister of Finance to instruct the CPO to return to the negotiation table with a 10% offer for the period 2014 to 2019. That is not rhetoric, it is action. It is respect. It is promises made and promises kept. Again, National Recruitment Drive, 20,000 positions across 25 ministries. Again, real jobs, real people, real change. Colleagues, we have again reversed in that simple move seek to reverse the labor participation rate. We're talking about also the creation of a productivity ecosystem, Madam Vice President. And with that, Madam Vice President, I know my time is nearly out. I would like to wind up by saying the UNC is not just fixing what is broken. We are building what was never dared. And those who still cling to the old ways, I say this: the train has left the station. Either get on board or get out the way. Madam Vice President, I thank you, because under this UNC government, under the leadership of the Honorable Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesayasi, one thing is certain: promises made, promises kept. Because when UNC wins, I thank you.